Donald Trump is firing the head of the NSA. This is just amazing. So everybody was like asking questions that I was asking right here on the show, right? How is it that you could have such a scandal with Signalgate and no one be held responsible? This is a big deal, right? I mean, how exactly did this all go down? Let's go back in time. Just so, what was it? A few weeks ago, you had Pete Hegseth, Mike Waltz, you had the head of the CIA, John Radcliffe, you had Tulsi Gabbard, all of them on a discussion chat on Signal. And at some point, Pete said, okay, like these things are going to be firing off and this is what's going to happen. It was actually a very successful mission, I should point out, unlike Afghanistan. Very, very successful. But what was weird about this whole thing is that somehow a reporter from The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, who, by the way, does the left's bidding any single time they want, he was on this text chain. And you kind of had to wonder, like, how did that happen? How did that happen? It was something that came up on a recent episode on Fox with Laura Ingraham when she asked Mike Waltz, who allegedly created this. Well, apparently a staffer did. But he created this text chain on Signal. And she's like, how does this happen? Like, how do you add a guy like Jeffrey Goldberg into the system? It doesn't make sense. And it's why, actually, the NSA should be held accountable. Anyway, let's go to Mike Waltz trying to explain it, and he's scratching his head, too. I don't know.
What staffer is responsible for this right now?
Well, look, a staffer wasn't responsible, and look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the number? I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right? You got somebody else's number on someone else's contact. So of course I didn't see this loser in the group. It looked like someone else. Now whether he did it deliberately or it happened in some other technical mean is something we're trying to figure out.
So a staffer did not put his contact information.
No,
but how did it end up in your phone?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay, but that's a pretty big problem.
That's what we've got the best technical minds, right?
That's disturbing.
And that's where, I mean, I'm sure everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone? I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, but it's just curious. How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets sucked in.
Someone sent you that
it gets sucked in.
Was there someone else supposed to be on the chat that wasn't on the chat that you thought was on the chat?
So the person that I thought was on there was never on there. It was this guy.
Who was that? What person?
Well, I'm not. Look, okay. Laura, I take responsibility. I built the group.
Okay.
So but look, that's the part that we have to figure out, and that's the part that embarrassing, yes, but Pete and I are veterans. We know these operations. He has been an excellent Secretary of Defense, and this was an operation that, I mean, it amazes me. I guess the Democrats were fine to leave all the sea lanes shut down. We're fine to have destroyers fired on dozens of times by this terrorist group, and fine to have Iran keep supplying them missiles. That was okay. The president takes decisive action. And now we're seeing some real success in taking down their air defenses, opening the sea lanes, taking out their leadership. We don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about this.
Well, there's a reason for that. Okay, so don't kid yourself. Like, this just doesn't mysteriously happen. Laura's asking the right questions. Like, how? How is it that Jeffrey Goldberg, who you claim you've never even talked to, Mike Waltz, how would he wind up on that chain? So you guys get it, right? You get your contacts on your phone, and then you're on Signal. Now, interestingly, John Radcliffe told us in the intel hearings, that Biden's CIA said, here you go, Signal is the safest thing you can use. So they were using it. Maybe they shouldn't have been using it, but they were using it, and they were then transferring it over to the Trump team. So Mike Waltz has these contacts in his phone, and apparently his staffer put together this text chain, but I don't buy, like, that's too easy, okay? It's way too easy to say, okay, we're gonna blame the staffer. I know, like, some of you guys are all looking into him and you're wondering about him, but I think it's a little too easy. What I'm concerned about is that there's some kind of internal spying op going on, because there's people that maybe aren't so loyal to the president, and they want to make sure, okay, we know at all times what's going on. And then there's also people amongst that group that really, really don't like him. So if you really don't like him and you want to try and affect the situation, I'm hypothesizing here, okay? So we know he got rid of the head of the NSA. We have some inkling as to why, including some of Laura Loomer's reporting, which I'll get to in a second. But if you think about this, aren't you a little bit worried the NSA can crack anything? And then suddenly they're in your signal? And why are they in the signal? Like, I'm left with a lot of questions. And to me, you know what this smacked of? A setup. From the very beginning, I said, somebody set them up. I mean, you just don't pick Jeffrey Goldberg out of the blue. If you really want to, if it was actual hackers or something, then you'd probably have somebody in Iran or somebody in Russia or somebody in China doing all this. But it struck me as, okay, we're going to take them down. We got them. Pete said something he shouldn't have, and so we are guns blazes going after him. And so Donald Trump's like onto it, right? Which is why you see this guy here, the NSA director and Cyber Command Chief, Timothy Howell, being fired. Because, someone's head's got to roll after all, and it's not going to be Pete, because the president wants Pete there, and he's already expressed his support for Pete. He's expressed his support for Mike Waltz, for John Radcliffe, you name it, Tulsi Gabbard. So who's it going to be? Well, what about the guy that's supposed to be in charge of all the cybersecurity? I mean, if they believe that this was a hack and Elon's team is actually looking into it, Elon knows a thing or two about technology. If they believe that this was somehow a hack, then maybe there is some responsibility that he bears. I suspect that this is what the president fears. And so, yes, Tim Ha has been fired. Of course, that's not what the Democrats want. They're out there saying, we got to get rid of Pete. We got to get rid of Pete Hegseth. It's all his fault. Here's Senator Kelly. I want to show you moments ago.
Mr. President, Pete Hegseth needs to resign. And if he won't, the president should fire him. No accountability sends the wrong message. Now, I asked the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, and the CIA Director Radcliffe directly in a hearing. I asked them, was there discussions of targets in Yemen? And the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, said yes. And that's a big deal. And I also asked, would they approve that chat for public release? Neither would say yes. And that tells you all you need to know. If anyone, from the most junior enlisted service member to a 4-star admiral, had done this, they'd be facing real consequences. They'd be fired.
Okay. So, he wants a head on a platter, right? All the Democrats want someone's head on the platter. Right now they want Donald Trump's, and they're blaming the whole market sell-off on Donald Trump, et cetera, and the tariffs. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But here's the reality. They're like, okay, we got a live one. They may have set this whole thing up. I'm not kidding, because of all people, Jeffrey Goldberg, really, and of course he's echoing the same thing that Mark Kelly's just saying. He's like, you got to get rid of these guys because they put me on this text chain. He's doing everything they would have wanted. Right? He's someone who's innocuous enough. He's an American. He's not going to take it to the Iranians or the Chinese or anything like that. He's going to take it to the Democrat Party. And the Democrat Party is like, and then they roll it out. Interestingly enough, on the eve of the Intel hearings, don't you find the timing just a little bit suspicious? Here's one Mr. Goldberg saying what he thinks should happen.
Just on that point, on Senator Kennedy's point, and going to Joe's point, in the Army, in the armed forces, at the lower levels, they also have to adhere to cybersecurity rules.
Is this not a talking point? I mean, you just heard the exact same thing from Senator Mark Kelly just a couple moments ago.
And social media rules. And you can go to jail. You can go to Leavenworth for mishandling what we would consider to be minor classified information, right? And so, and if you look in military Reddit and a lot of other places where people are discussing this right now, there's a lot of, hey, we would get busted for this, but they don't get.
Yeah, you might get busted unless you were actually set up. And I think the president actually believes, and I've questioned this all along, whether this was a set-up operation. Just a little too convenient so that Hillary Clinton could be like, on the emails. Well, Hillary, you had an entire server, so let's not even go there. Meanwhile, you got CNN, gleeful over the whole thing. This guy who used to actually have a show, shockingly enough, and at some point they figured out he wasn't exactly TV material, and so they relegated him to a newsletter. But he pops up now and then just to kind of rub people the wrong way. Let's go to his commentary on this thing. Oh, this is so stupid. They're so stupid. They're so stupid. Stupid, but like if they're set up and they don't have the proper security in place because maybe the NSA is not entirely on their side, which we're going to get to in one moment, then, maybe that's what happens.
The administration has just confirmed to CNN that this Signal message group was authentic.
Yes, and Goldberg now knows that as well. He wondered for days if this was real or if it was a setup. Goldberg has been criticized by Trump and the Trump administration in the past. Just last week, Trump attacked The Atlantic magazine at the same time that, Goldberg was working on this story. So Goldberg wondered, was this real or was it a trap? Was someone trying to trick him? And once the bombs actually fell in Yemen, he realized this was real and something worth reporting on. Also noteworthy, he has now left that group chat, even though presumably he could have stayed in there and kept listening in for a while longer. Goldberg's article at theatlantic.com is well worth a read for people who haven't read it yet.
Oh my gosh, it's like he's selling
about the
it.
inner workings of the Trump administration.
Yeah. He's like selling us on, go read it at The Atlantic. I don't know, like maybe you're a good reporter who would actually say, gee, maybe I should call the White House because this is concerning to me, rather than go wild with it and call all your Democrat friends. I mean, he's basically just an arm of the Democrat Party. Oh, but we know that about the media now, don't we now? Yeah, we know. They are nothing but an arm of the Democrat Party, and that's been proven over and over and over again, and this is just the latest and greatest. So now Donald Trump's like, okay, well, someone's going to pay, and it's going to be the head of the NSA because this is the guy that should have known better. He should have better protected us. And could he have protected them? Well, that's not really entirely clear, in part because he was sworn in under the other team. And I'm just going to mention something. Like, here you are putting in a head of CIA, you got a head of DNI, you got a new, Secretary of Defense. Like, maybe you need a new head of the NSA, knowing that the NSA actually can listen to everything, okay? They're like CIA on steroids. So maybe in this case, you do actually want to have your own person, your own loyalist. It kind of seems like a logical thing. And yet, for whatever reason, he hadn't put that person in. Laura Loomer was going on and on about vetting. The left is furious with her. The media is furious with her. They're saying she has too much power because somehow she apparently clued Donald Trump into the fact that not everybody had been vetted. And this resulted in 4 NSC people getting the heave-ho, along with the head of the NSA and his second lieutenant person. Here's Laura Loomer talking about this on actually Steven Crowder's show recently.
I just think that there needs to be more appreciation demonstrated to Trump loyalists because unfortunately, we do see a lot of gatekeeping in the GOP. And the thing that I harped on the most during the campaign season was, the importance of vetting. We need to vet people so that we don't have the same nightmare that we saw happen in the first administration, where people who are disloyal to President Trump curry favor once the election's over after, shit talking him the entire election season. And then they just get to go, oh, you know what? I'm going to sneak in and I'm going to reap all the benefits and the glory and the praise of getting a White House job.
Sure.
I thought that we were keeping a binder full of receipts. I don't know if some of the people on the campaign meant it when they said they were keeping the receipts, but I meant it.
Yeah.
I literally have a binder of receipts and I know who's loyal and I know who is disloyal.
Okay, so that's Laura, and she's making this point because, you know what, this is a president who's up against it in different ways, right? In ways that, frankly, Joe Biden didn't even have to deal with, maybe until the very, 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 very end. And she went out there and she did all this digging, and she's a good reporter, and she's, she knows her way around Google. And basically, she figured out these were all Biden appointees. And do you really want a Biden person running the NSA? Now, the left would tell you, oh, it doesn't matter because this is nonpartisan, et cetera. Well, this guy was, one of General Milley's people. So do you really want a General Milley person there running the NSA, knowing that the NSA is probably spying on you? I think it's a fair, you know what? There's a reason to be paranoid right now, okay? There's a reason to be paranoid. If you're Donald Trump and you're on his team, of course you're paranoid. You're paranoid because, for goodness sakes, ladies and gentlemen, look at what they did. I mean, they tried to bankrupt him. We'll get to Letitia in a second. To the tune of he now owes more than $500 million, $500 million. They tried to throw him in jail. They got the mugshot, which he's proud of, as he should be, courtesy of Fannie Willis down in Fulton County, Georgia. You got Alvin Bragg, who was trying to, who did finally get the criminal conviction that they were so desiring. I mean, this is nuts. And then on top of it, look, of course he doesn't trust anything because he was nearly killed in Pennsylvania. All right. So I think that Laura Loomer saying, gee, maybe you want your own person in charge at the NSA. You want the deputy at the NSA to be your own person. You want to make sure that everybody on your NSC team is really rooting for you as opposed to the other side. I mean, I think that's kind of just exactly what it should be, right? Given this is unique. Like, he has a lot of detractors, a lot of people that really, really fundamentally don't like him, but might be willing to take the gig, or a lot of never-Trumper type Republicans that are half in, half out. Think about what went down the other day with poor Elon. We love Elon, do we not, here on this show? Look at what Elon's done. And by the way, he's exposing all kinds of stuff, and there's more to come. But Donald Trump has a meeting with his cabinet members. And within minutes of that closed-door meeting ending, Politico has an article that Elon Musk is out. We led with this the other day. And I was like, well, it took me a while actually to get on air because I was trying to vet it, et cetera. We don't want to just entirely go with what Politico is saying. But bottom line, he's going to be out the end of May. Anyway, that was always the intention. I think it caught Elon by surprise. It took him about 6 hours to actually respond via tweet. And now Donald Trump saying on the plane just last night on Air Force One, he's going to miss Elon. He likes smart people, and the Elon has made a major contribution. But eventually everybody knew he was going to go back to his businesses. I get back to, how did that leak? Somebody, one of the cabinet members, decided to make a phone call to one of their reporter friends or text their reporter friend. And then all of a sudden, it's everywhere. It's on Bloomberg, it's on Politico, it's on Daily Mail. It was everywhere. So if you can't trust your top lieutenants because they just run their mouth and they're on their phones and you give them confidential information and say, Elon's probably going to be phasing out, and you're trusting them, and they run off to the media with it, that's pretty darn bad. I mean, look, the media is they're just a bad bunch, and they can't keep a secret, and they love to chat, and there's some really, really seedy connection there between politics and the media. And I say that, having been a member of the media as long as I have been, but I still don't really consider myself an insider in that way, only in that, look, I quadruple check everything, right? I would never go with anything based on one source. I have multiple sources. I would never betray a source. I would never betray my boss, for goodness sakes. You're in a cabinet meeting and your boss, the president of the United States, says, Elon's probably going to be winding down. And the first thing you do is you run out and call Politico. Somebody did it. Somebody did it. So Laura is not wrong. She's not wrong. And okay, that the left doesn't like her. The left doesn't like her because maybe she has some influence because Donald Trump is like, okay, this girl actually, she's got it going on. She's out there doing the research on the people that are working for the NSA. She's done all this research on the judges, right? And all the sort of strange connections that say the judge who's now actually taking that Signal Gate case, what his background is, who his daughter works for. It happens to be an NGO that is defending some of these MS-13 gang members. He's, by the way, the judge that wanted to stop the plane midair. Those are important things to know.